It's the most wonderful time of the year. Yes, that's right, it's the post-Christmas record haul. So it's time to show you guys what I spend all of my Christmas money on. So first up, we have the used record of Electric Light Orchestra's A New World Record. And this is actually one of my favorite albums from there. It's a little bit of an underrated one just because it's overshadowed by Out of the Blue. Mission is definitely an underrated song. You need to listen to it. Such a fantastic song and such a fantastic album. And with this, I picked up Jeff Lynne's ELO, Alone in the Universe. I'm actually going to slide over here so that people can get a good look at the albums here. Alone in the Universe. I've only heard the first side of this. I was spending a lot of my Sunday listening to all these records, so I only got a chance to listen to the first side of this, but I'm liking what I've got on here. Hopefully you'll see a full-length review on here. So next up is a Canadian group of Alves, or Alves. I think it's Alves. Anyway, there's their name right there, Alves. So I heard these guys while I was out in Alberta for this Christmas, and while I was out there I was listening to a lot of the Canadian indie, and these guys were featured on there, and this was their 2015 release, I guess their self-titled work. So I'm excited to listen to this. So next up we have two albums from a soundtrack, Kill Bill Volume 1 and Kill Bill Volume 2. As with most of Tarantino's films, Kill Bill has beautiful music in it. They hand select songs for both of the movies, and it's really hard to say which one I like better. They're both brilliant. Both of these fantastic soundtracks, one of my favorites. Probably my favorite of the Quentin Tarantino soundtracks, and if you know a lot of his soundtracks, that's saying a lot because each soundtrack of his is just stellar. So speaking of an indie band, we have The Shins' Port of Morrow. I've been looking for this album for quite a while, since it was released. Ever since it's released, after that first wave has gone through, nobody's really restocked any of the albums. I've always found their past albums, but never finding this guy here, so I'm so glad that I was able to pick this guy up. It's my favorite Shins album, and if you remember, I did a top 10 review of albums that weren't progressive rock or metal between the years of 2010 and 2015, and this guy made it at number 2. So if you haven't already had a listen to it, I highly recommend it, especially if you're into that indie kind of a sound. These guys are right up your league. I really like these guys, and this is the most solid record from these guys. And another album that I've been kind of holding off picking up, unlike Port of Morrow, this one has more been an album that I've always seen, but just because of the price tag, I've always shied away from it. I figured I might as well pick it up. I got OK Computer by Radiohead, my favorite album by Radiohead by far. I love every single track on this. Unlike a lot of Radiohead's albums where I love a lot of their tracks, I always felt like most of their albums had those handful of songs that were just experimentation for experimentation's sake, and it didn't quite land. This is one of the few albums where every single track lands, and every single track is just stellar. And so obviously, if you haven't already listened to this album, please listen to it because it is just an outstanding record. And I'm so glad that I finally have it. Okay, so this next one was a little bit on the pricey side, but again, I figured might as well splurge while I can. It is the Parentheses album by Sigur Rós. Now, they only made about 4,000 copies of this, so I was glad that I was able to pick one up while they were still available. This one is a little bit of a darker take on their music. This was when they were starting to get more atmospheric in terms of a darkness, and I really like it, and I love the contrast, especially, really symbolized here. And I mean, half of their songs are impressionistic, and it's definitely that post-rock feel of that music, and so I love the fact that I was able to listen to this on vinyl finally, and I love every single track on this. This is just a journey from beginning to end. And of course, going back to my youth and going back to my high school days, we have A Perfect Circle, the 13th Step. This is right out of my high school life. I mean, songs such as The Noose and The Package are right up there with basically my whole teenage years. I wasn't quite into Tool yet. They were still just a little far out of my reach. This was a great gateway into Maynard's kind of style of music and his artistic style. Perfect Circle always has that warm place in my heart that I could just listen to and I get drifted away. It's such a great addition to my record collection. And finally, to round everything off, I finally found and picked up Colors by Between the Buried and Me. Arguably my favorite album from the group. Well, it's either that or The Great Misdirect. The two kind of go back and forth of which one's my favorite, but this one definitely has some of their staple songs, such as Ants in the Skies, Son of Nothing, and especially White Walls. That last 5 minutes of White Walls is just breathtakingly beautiful, and this album is breathtakingly beautiful. If you're into that kind of technical progressive metal, if you're into that just death tech prog, this is the album for you. You have to pick it up because it is a staple. It is up there with albums that you need to own. And so I'm very glad that I have this. And that's all the records that I was able to pick up throughout the Christmas season. What did you guys think? Which one was your favorite? Let me know commenting below. And hopefully I'll get a new review by the end of this week. So keep tuned for that. Until then, notes out.